Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. The idea for today's episode struck me last Sunday morning while I was reading a book, having a cup of coffee, and not thinking at all about work, business, or my podcast. I was just relaxing and soaking in the morning. This episode might be a little different than what you're used to. It's going to be a little bit more of a storytelling and personal sharing, but I'm going to make sure that it's tangible, actionable, and practical because I want you to be able to apply this for yourself too. Hi, welcome back to the Content with Character podcast. It feels like I've been away from my microphone a little too long. And if you're a regular listener, you're probably like, Emily, don't be silly. We just heard from you in your episode last week. And yes, you did. But here is my dirty little secret. I have been really on the ball since December, I would say. And I was on a serious roll that took me into January through February. Basically, I was just like batch creating a lot of content. Podcasts, emails, a few blogs, sometimes social even. I was like a batching queen. And if you don't know what batching is, I would get like an entire month's worth of stuff done in like 2 sittings. And then all I had to do was sit back and let it fly, let it roll out on a consistent schedule. So somewhere in all that batching and creating, I also got like overly zealous and I dove headfirst into Instagram Reels also, because why not? And then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm so far ahead. Why not add in like an extra email into my weekly mix every now and then as a peppery little surprise for folks? Anyway, so for a couple months there, I was humming along, feeling like the queen of my content kingdom, and that also freed me up to balance all of my client work without feeling like I even had to like really think about my content at all. It was nice. I was generating a lot. I was way ahead, and it all felt really easy and fun. But I soon learned that keeping up with everything that I was doing wasn't really sustainable for me long term with the way that I was like scheduling my life. And more importantly, it wasn't all stuff that I needed or even wanted to be prioritizing right now. So I had some decisions to make, and it led me to some questions, which I wanted to invite you to think about and answer for yourself too. And that is where we're going in today's episode. So for a little context, for the month of March on the Content with Character podcast, my desire is really to share with you some pragmatic, tangible things to make your life easier. I want to help you add value to your content and also help you navigate like real life as a business owner. Because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, we have to make decisions every single day about what to take on and what not to take on, how we market ourselves and how we get the word out and how we don't. And so I think that like giving some actual like tangible practical things is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a good month on the podcast. And as I always say, like if you're not listening live time as these episodes come out and for some reason it's not March for you right now, don't worry, don't panic. This always still applies. It's as evergreen as possible. It's as evergreen as I can make it. And you don't have to listen in any particular order. It's not like a classroom curriculum or something like that. So in line with those tangibles, those how-tos, those practicals, I wanted to share actually like a little bit of behind the scenes on how I ideate for the podcast because it's also in line with where I'm taking you today. I promise we'll bring this all together. So Content with Character has its own little Google Doc. It's specifically designated just for ideas. So anytime I'm out in the world or just in my business, right, and I hear something, I see something, I think something, I feel something, no matter how messy or unflushed it is at that time, I just like add it to the idea sheet. Like it's kind of like my save for later. So that idea page, I also like started that back when I thought of the podcast back in March of last year. So you can imagine the idea page for this podcast is chock full. And I don't really see that ever, I don't see the well ever running dry, which some of you can probably relate to in certain areas too. Ideas tend to not be in short supply when we're really excited about what we're creating and when we really love what we do. So my process is to take those ideas. Well, first I build out a month, right? So like I'll set kind of a tone or an idea for the month, a main idea, and then I pull out 4 or 5 ideas from that sheet that go together thematically. And then I like outline, ideate on, conceptualize, and contemplate, like start letting them all kind of simmer in my brain individually. That's my process. So it ends up sort of being like a cohesive chapter book where you could just read one chapter and enjoy topic by topic, or you could follow along reading the whole book and see and watch as it flows one into the next, and simultaneously kind of comes together to tell that full story. So for this week's episode, it was like the kickoff of March. Very important, if you ask me. I'm like, I need to make a big attempt to set the scene for what is to come. So, as always, I sat down with the 5 ideas that I had in front of me for the month, and I'm like sitting there trying to flush them out one by one, trying to get this episode what I wanted it to be. And I kept getting stuck. Like nothing was working. So for me, that's a sign that I want to kind of like take a pause, stop forcing something to fit where it's not supposed to go, and just go with the flow. And that looked like, for this episode, just waiting until the right thing popped into my awareness to take its rightful place. And when it does, I always know, because that thing, that idea, it feels very inspiring and exciting and energizing. And I'm like, oh my God, I just cannot wait to get behind my mic and share with you about it. So today's episode was kind of like that. And all that to say, like, if you hate it or if it sucks, well, we'll just blame it on inspiration and not me. I can't take the blame. We blame inspiration. But seriously, not every episode is going to be for everyone. And if this one's not for you, bless and release. I will still welcome you to come back with open arms next week or whenever you shall return. Today's idea struck me last Sunday morning while I was just sitting there reading a book, having a cup of coffee, and not thinking about work, business, or my podcast at all. I was just relaxing and soaking in my morning. And the episode might be a little bit different than what you're used to here. It's going to be like a little bit more of a storytelling and personal sharing, but I promise that I'm going to make sure that there is that tangible, actionable, practical piece in it, because I want you to be able to take this for yourself and apply it too. Real quick about me, just in case you're new here or in case you need a reminder, I'm Emily Aborn. I'm a copywriter, podcast host of this podcast, as well as the She Built This podcast. In a nutshell, the way I make my living is generating creative words and ideas for women entrepreneurs and business owners. I really bring who they are, who they serve, and how they help to life in unique and clear ways, because I don't know about you, but it can be hard to put your finger on what exactly sets you apart, and then also figure out how to say it clearly and in a way that is going to land with the people that you want it to land with. So I kind of take that guesswork out of it for people and do it for them. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, one of my biggest goals in that is just to help people stand out, help business owners stand out in a way that is distinctly them. It is human. We didn't come here to sound like ChatGPT, am I right? Okay, I also wanted to read a quick review of the week, and at the same time, I have to give a shout out to my friend Alicia Galati of the Listeners to Leads and Successful Podcasting Unlocked podcast, because she showed me how to find hidden reviews. I didn't even know these existed. They were out there on Chartable. There are people listening in other countries, and when they write you a review on the Apple Podcast app from another country, you can't see them on the Apple Podcast app. So I discovered that we actually have listeners in Canada, Great Britain, Trinidad, Saudi Arabia, Tobago, and Australia. So that was very exciting in and of itself. And then I found all of these like hidden reviews. So that episode that Alicia did where she talks about like how to find these reviews, I'm going to put that as a link in the show notes in case you have a podcast and you're like, oh my gosh, what if I have hiding reviews too? You just may. So here's a quick review. It's very overdue for its moment in the sun. And this is by Minnow Sandu. Minnow says, I've always loved Emily's content, emails, social posts, and podcasts. I'm very grateful for these episodes, and I always take something away from them. So I just want to give a big thank you to Minnow Sandu. I'm glad you're loving the show. And if you too are a loyal listener and you haven't left me a review yet, you know I will welcome a loving review with open arms. And apparently now I've just learned that no matter where you live, I will be able to find it and give you that moment in the sun in a future episode. Okay, housekeeping over, intro over. I just like to give you context for the episode, do a little cleanup, because I like us all to start on the same page. So here we are. Settle in and let's go. Last year, I read Catherine Price's book, The Power of Fun, and it gave me a lot to think about regarding what fun actually is versus what we think fun is. And when it got down to it, I was like, oh, I don't actually know if I've been having much fun. She also talked about the many benefits from like our relationships to just our overall health in doing things simply for fun's sake. So after reading the book, I had already been thinking a lot about like how I wanted to create more space for fun in my life. And by fun, and it says this right on the back cover of her book, I'm not talking about more doom scrolling or checking your social media feed or working. Like, yes, maybe those things are enjoyable, but it's not by her definition what constitutes fun. So at the beginning of this year, 2024, I decided to start implementing some of what I read in her book. And simultaneously, I also made some personal promises, some commitments to myself to focus on things for my health and also for my body. I guess they're one and the same. My mental health and also my physical health. So self-care, I guess, technically, if I were to like label it, though I don't really think that like overly cliche self-care does it justice. This is really just like habits and routines and like areas of personal growth I was looking to focus on in my life. I knew that I was going to need a little extra time, some extra space in order to be able to focus on these things. And so what I did is I said to myself, you know what? For the first 100 days of the year, I like even numbers, and it corresponded with one of the very specific habits I started. I said, for the first 100 days of the year, I'm going to add in these things or take away these things. And I'm not going to get into the details. Feel free to ask if we chat regularly, but because I'm always happy to share. But it was just simply involving stuff like being outside, learning new things, connecting more, meditating, couple vitamins, taking away stuff, adding in different movement, blah, 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 blah. Like I said, I'm not going to bore you with the details. But I will say this, it was pretty much all stuff that either I kept kicking down the road and saying, oh, I'll do that someday, or I'll do that later. And the rest of it was stuff that like I would do sporadically at best. And I just really, really wanted to be more consistent with. So what surprised me about it was that once I decided this actually surprised me about myself. Once I decided to just like make day one be day one and do this stuff I never thought I could stick with or have the attention span for or enjoy. I'll use meditating. That's a great example, actually. Some of that kind of stuff became the exact thing that I start craving and looking forward to every day. And I noticed for me that a lot of it was just a matter of like making that space, prioritizing it, and then choosing, you know what, I am just going to be consistent with this. I also heard somebody on a podcast say anything that you start on January 1st is doomed because your brain automatically thinks you're going to fail. So you set yourself up to fail right from the get-go. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove this lady wrong. And so I started on January 1st. I mean, if she was using reverse psychology, then I guess like the joke's on me. But I like to think I'm a rebel without a cause. And so joke is on her. Either way, it doesn't matter. So far, so good in sticking with what I promised myself that I would. As I am sitting here recording this episode, it is day 62 out of my little 100-day experiment, and I've stuck with everything that I committed to, and I'm not actually really wanting 100 days to be the end. Like, a lot of this is eerily starting to feel like it might become habits and permanent parts of my life. I know. What have I done? Okay. The thing about everything I set out to do, I told you it was about like my emotional health and my physical health. None of it actually had to do with work or business or creating more content. I mean, yes, like I said, it was for my brain and my body and my emotional well-being. Definitely impacts my work, but I didn't like join some group program or take another course or sign up for a new marketing thing or join a new group or fix stuff on my website or write more blogs or network. There's nothing wrong with those things. There is obviously a time for every single one of those things, but for me right now, that time was not now. I wanted to prioritize and just like focus on these pieces of my health and well-being. So it's all related to like just my overall well-being, not business. And I know some of you listening right now are probably like, oh my God, here she comes with the biohacks. Emily, where are you going with this? Just give us permission to create less content or tell us how much we're supposed to be creating. Or maybe you're worried that where I'm headed with this is just like some message to call it a day, ignore your business, go smell some flowers, and it's all just going to magically work out. I promise. A, I will make this apply, and B, I'm not going to tell you to just stop working. I mean, unless that's what you can and also want to do. You do whatever works for you, but that is not the point of this episode. The point is that there was a time not too long ago that I really believed that if you do not focus on, if I didn't focus on, or at least think about my business and my work as the utmost priority in my life, my business would not succeed. And so, as a result, that is what I did. I've been building this thing going on 6 years now, and pretty much during that time, I have placed my business, my work, as the utmost priority in my life. I've been focusing on my business, working on it, working in it. And I've been really, if I'm real, I guess I've been kind of doing that for the last decade, because prior to that, my husband and I owned a business together, and it truly did consume our every waking moment and even some of our sleeping moments as well. So I think that a past version of me was worried that if I truly focused on anything besides my business, a shoe would drop, things would crumble before my very eyes, I would lose all of my creativity. If I stopped creating all the time, my desire to work would completely fade if I accidentally discovered joy somewhere else in life, and I would never respond to anyone ever if I didn't respond to them in that moment instantaneously. But listen, none of that is actually truth. None of that is the case. First off, during this 62 days, my actual business world has been a little crazy pants in a really, really good way. And it is not stopping anytime soon. I don't think. I'm still moving and shaking over here, as I'm also working on other aspects of my life. I'm working in my business, working hard, loving it. I've been doing lots of strategy sessions and brand messaging guides and website copy and blogs and yada, yada, yada. And if anything, I would have to say that it's, while being busier than ever, I'm actually feeling less stressed and less overwhelmed and enjoying myself when I'm working more than normal. Secondly, I have very much not at all lost my excitement for work. If anything, when I give myself breaks and downtime and time to focus on me, when I get back to sitting down and focusing on work, I come in more focused, more productive, more positive, and more excited. And so that's kind of, I think, I don't know how to put this episode in a nutshell, but that's the point. And here's the thing. I didn't, and you don't need a day one. You don't need a 100-day reset. You don't need a set amount of time or even like set things that you're working on. You can start now. You can do simple, minuscule, everyday, find joy in the moment kind of things. You can adapt and implement and start right away in whatever way works for you. I'm not asking you to scrap everything you're doing, stop creating content, stop marketing yourself. What I'm encouraging you to do is to take a look at what you need to be doing. Also, what do you want to be prioritizing in your business? But also, not just your business, what do you need to be doing and want to be prioritizing in the rest of your life? There's just so much to life outside of our businesses, so much more to life than just being a business owner. And it's all out there waiting for us to back away from our desks and go check it out. And I want to say this part too, because I think that this is very important. I'm not over here like some wildly wealthy person, not by a long shot. Both my husband and I work to earn a living. And honestly, I've been working to earn a living since I was a kid. I've been a person who works hard for what I have. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to work and also what I have in my life as a result of it. I mean, my actual name, the name Emily, means industrious one. So there you go. Thanks a lot, Mom. You gave me this. But I share that to share I'm not the one here suggesting we're going to be like those Instagram influencers who get to live their lives at the beach all day, every day, and somehow are bragging about their 20K months. I'm just simply talking about prioritizing our joy and life and well-being outside of work in the bits of time that we do have away from our business. Because I think that when we give ourselves a little bit of permission to disconnect, maybe do a little bit less, right? Create a little bit less, we come back with a lot more excitement, a lot more productivity, a lot more focus, all the wonderful things. And that is kind of a contrary message to what a lot of people are telling us to do. And I think a lot of business owners I talk to get sucked into this. They feel this need to always be doing more, to keep adding, to keep inventing, to keep creating and amassing in various ways. It could look completely different depending on who you are and what your business is. And no one is really, not many people, I should say, are out there saying, hey, you know what? Maybe enough is enough. And there's more to life beyond that elusive more in your business, which is like a never-ending tunnel. The other day, I went to get mine and my husband Jason's wedding rings cleaned, and I had a conversation with the shop owner. This is like one of these little tiny places where if you're having a conversation, everybody in the shop can hear you, and all the employees, I think there were 3 of them, they were like gathered around, okay? Once we started chatting, like all the employees come gathering around. So now we're all sort of talking. And the owner and I, we specifically go way back. We have a couple of little connection points. So I'm sure I've already told her what I do for work, but doesn't matter. Regardless, she'd forgotten and asked me what I do for work. So when I shared with them that I do copywriting, they all kind of seemed confused by it. One of them asked me if it was that thing, like, oh, is that like in the front of books, that little circle around the letter C at the bottom of documents and like in front of books? And I was like, well, no, that's a copyright. This is copywriting with a W. So then from there, I kind of elaborated on that, right? And I was like, well, it's like, websites and blogs and emails for businesses and things like that. And one of the ladies pipes up and says, oh, is that like this new thing I keep hearing about, marketing? And I just had to laugh a little bit because, well, marketing is not exactly new. I did Google it, actually. It's actually been around since 1500 BCE. And I have found that hard to believe too. So I definitely included the link to the article I found in the show notes. But, well, after kind of like having a little internal laugh, I went with it and I just kept kind of explaining it as simplistically as I could. The point of my story is being in that little shop in my quintessential New Hampshire downtown, talking to those ladies who didn't even know what marketing was. And that's like my entire day in, day out reality. it was just so simple and so quiet and peaceful and like disconnected from the noise, but also simultaneously really connected to just like being with other human beings. It was awesome. The online space can be a noisy place. And I think that entrepreneurship itself can be a noisy place and busy. It is so busy. There's so much to do all the time. And while things are not black and white, everywhere you turn, people are slinging business and content creation advice like it's just fact. Like it's just simply copy and paste. This works for everybody. And the other thing I think is that it's usually an encouragement or some sort of way to get you to do more, making you feel less than and like you always need to be doing more. It's like this frenetic pace that the faster you run, the more you feel behind. It feels like listening to a podcast on 2x speed. And sometimes it is just too much. And this is coming like from a content person. But I really don't think that a lot of us need to be creating as much content as people tell us to. And that comes in different forms. That's another episode for another day. But let's take that bigger picture. We don't always need to be chasing, striving, crushing it, hustling, and creating. Priorities shift and change. And so every business and everybody's life is going to have seasons, right? Seasons on what we focus on in our businesses and also in our lives. Seasons where our time might go different places at different times. Seasons of consistency and frequency. All of those things, they're constantly ebbing and flowing and changing. But that's not the message we're getting most often. It's just kind of this blanket message of constant day in and day out consistency. And we're not reminded that we also can just choose to like not do something and do less overall, like all the time. Like we can consistently do less. And I guess what I've been learning is that doing less is really important because it gives yourself chances, like even those micro little chances to take breaks, to find joy, take mini breaks if that's all you have time for. But the more you disconnect, and I mean really disconnect, the more you actually end up making space for that creativity, for that productivity, for that excitement, for your business really to like have a little breathing room, right? To flourish. And you can step in more productive, more clear, more focused, all the things. So here's the beauty of this. Doesn't need to be a week off, doesn't need to be a month off, etc., etc. This is just small moments throughout your life, throughout your day that refill your cup. And you can invite yourself to step away, reduce your screen time, I think is great. Choose to do less, create less, and even less, create less content sometimes. When you spend less time constantly doing, and I'll also add constantly connected, you end up spending a lot less time comparing yourself to other people, a lot less time feeling behind. You take in less negativity from the outside world, and the ripple effect of all that is you reduce the stress in your own life. Your creativity also has that breathing room, like a chance to come roaring back to life. You know how all your best ideas are in the shower or like when you're driving? That is me too. That is most of us. And recently I noticed that happening again. Like I was like, oh, I'm just doing something entirely relaxing and fun. I was in a yoga class and then again in a long overdue massage. And both instances I walked away accidentally with like these fully fleshed out ideas for my business. They just kind of like popped into my head. And like I shared at the beginning of this episode, the way this podcast came to be was when I was just sitting there sipping my coffee on a Saturday morning, not thinking about it at all. So the other thing I think is when we give ourselves a chance to take a break, we back away from the desk, we visit our local, Piggly Wiggly or downtown, whatever it looks like for you, we find ourselves experiencing more real connection with real people in the real world face to face. And now for you introverts out there, I don't even think that this has to come with you even talking to anybody. You will just start to feel more connected overall when you're kind of like not just sitting there working. I am as big of a texter to stay in touch as they come, but I've been realizing lately that for me, it's just really, I really need to enjoy some of my relationships in person. Texting is not it doesn't bring me as much joy to stay in touch with people that way as it used to. And the other reconnection I think you gain is reconnection with yourself. I think that, stepping away, you can sort of like recalibrate and reconnect with just you. I know for me, I spend most of my day writing like my clients. My job is basically to pretend that I am my clients as I'm writing for them. And then often, when I step away from that, I'm just consuming something, taking in other people's stuff, other people's thoughts, ideas, opinions, priorities. So it's important for me to get that time away to connect back to like who I am and just get quiet. Quiet is so, so important. It helps me be better for myself, understand myself more, and then simultaneously I can show up a better person for other people too. And then lastly, very importantly, when you step away, I just have been talking about this all along, you come back with more pep in your step, more energized, you're more present and focused, productive, engaged. Like actually, sometimes I think that I had too much time to work on my business, and it made me actually like take more time than I might need to on certain things. So now when I come back, I can be like really laser focused, and as I'm doing that, I find that I can like get things done more effectively and more efficiently. So I wanted to give you just 6 really small everyday ideas on how you could literally start putting these into action right away. And again, this is not some 100-day swearing off this or that or the other thing. This isn't beating yourself up. This isn't 75-day hard. It's not that. It's tiny little stuff you can start doing right now. So take what sounds fun or enjoyable for you or interesting to you and just leave the rest. So 6 little ideas. Number 1, get outside. Grab a friend, go for a walk, go alone if you usually go with somebody else. Go for a second walk if you only go for one. Amble, ramble, go faster than you usually do. Go slow if you walk like a cheetah hunting a wildebeest usually. Walk somewhere new. Walk somewhere that gives you happy memories. If you can't take walks, you can't get outside that way, what other ways work for you to get outside? So number 1 is really just like spend more time outside. Number 2, another idea is to consume books, podcasts, shows that are just for your enjoyment or your curiosity, not personal development or business growth. Read a fiction book. Read 2 fiction books. I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but I used to only read for like personal growth and business growth. And about a year ago, I shifted that to a split of like 75% fiction and 25% the other stuff. Now, honestly, it's probably more like 90% fiction and 10% anything self-development oriented. And I shouldn't just say fiction because some of it would be like factual, but 90% just for curiosity and enjoyment, 10% self-development oriented. If you already focus entirely on fiction, maybe you try something new. Maybe you try a new genre. And I would say let's not even just limit this to books. Like recently, I discovered an entire new world of podcasts, followed quickly also by shows I wanted to watch because I just was like, you know what? I'm going to open up to like any genre. And then there's a big old world of curiosity out there to explore at every turn. Also, I had completely written off audiobooks. I was like, oh, I cannot listen to audiobooks. And then one day I was like, you know what? What if I tried listening to an audiobook? I ended up listening to an entire audiobook in one day. So my point is, what if you just kind of like consume something that you're interested in and curious about and want to enjoy and has nothing to do with personal development or business growth? Step away from anything that's quote unquote productive and see where your curiosity takes you from there. Because that's the other thing with those podcasts and books and all that stuff. They can make you feel behind too. And they can make you feel like you're not doing enough as well. So just open up to learning about, reading about, listening to something new and see where it takes you. Idea number 3 is just to connect with a friend or family member. Bonus points if it's in person. But I heard this guy on a podcast recently share one of his rules for life. And I liked it, actually. He said if he's thinking about somebody, he sends them a text or gives them a phone call. And I was like, that's pretty great. And if I can't immediately do it in that moment when I'm thinking about them, I just kind of like jot it down on my weekend list or my tomorrow list. And I reach out and connect to them. Not to market to them, not to ask them for a business favor, not to even talk about business, just to say, you know what, I was thinking about you, ask them how it's going. Idea number 4, what do you want to try that's actually sounds fun to you? Or if fun feels like too much of a stretch, if it feels too foreign, maybe just something for self-care. I'm thinking stuff like glass blowing. I mean, would you like to try glass blowing? Or when was the last time you did a puzzle? Would you like to learn to paint? Maybe you want to get a massage or go salsa dancing or do yoga, go ice skating, roller skating, snowshoeing, paddleboarding, learn an instrument, take up pottery. What's something you might be putting off trying and you could just sign up and give it a whirl? I mean, it does not hurt, I promise. I just did a blog for a client on looking for ways to improve your professional life outside of work. And one of the things that technically I wrote it, but she included in the blog and wanted to bring up was that finding this group of friends who are kind of like non-judgmental, who are up for anything, and you each take turns suggesting an activity to try next. And one of the points of that was that, you don't have to commit to making this like your new identity. You don't have to sign up for a whole 10-week course in tap dancing classes, for example. You can just try something one time. And when you do it in this way, you set the stakes, you set the bar low. And it's like real low stakes, right? So it becomes this safe opportunity to build your confidence and your skills, just like different skills outside of work. You can try new things, fail at things, surprise yourself and be really, really good at things, gain a lot of like people skills and, stuff like that. And also just laugh at yourself along the way. I learned this in a recent paint outing that fun, which this was for sure fun, it is never perfect. And I think it's a good reminder to us that life isn't supposed to be perfect either. Okay, idea number 5 is to enjoy present time, no phones, no laptops, no devices with your spouse, your kids, your partner, etc., whoever you want. But when you're spending time with people, just allow yourself, maybe you set parameters around it, right? But just setting time to be present without those devices and remembering, and I am saying this as a reminder to myself as much as to you, not everything at every moment needs to be shared, needs to be content. Trust me, that is a reminder for us all. Okay, and lastly, 6th idea, I have had to do this, is just be honest with ourselves about how much time we're spending on social media, and not just how much time we're spending on social media, but why. Like if you truly do enjoy it, or if you have a solid reason for yourself, fine, I don't care. But if you want to decrease your social media time, and most people I talk to want to decrease their social media time, and if you find yourself constantly on it, checking in for every ping, ding, ding dong, and replying to everyone and everything in all the places, I would just get curious with yourself and ask yourself why. Are you bored? Are you lonely? Do you feel like if you don't constantly check it, you're going to miss something? I'll say this. I went through a majorly disenamored period with social media. And then from there, I sort of swung back. The pendulum swung back and I was full steam ahead, so excited about it, over the moon about it. And now I've kind of landed somewhere in between. It's sort of meh. That's how I want to feel about it. To be honest, it's a tool to connect with people. I use it as a business tool to stay top of mind and see what other people are up to. I enjoy being connected to my friends and seeing what certain people are doing. I also like the entertainment value, but I recognize that social media is not the sole thing keeping my business going. And so for me, I have had to put it in its rightful place priority-wise. I also mentioned, a couple times in this episode, I don't really feel the need to create nearly as much content as I was creating. I create when I'm excited about it. I create what I can create with like time and quality, and what I can create consistently at a frequency that works for me in my business. It's got to be manageable and not have you hustling every day to create content just for the sake of creating content, because that is not why we're here. We can probably all stand to cut back just a little bit on our social media time, both when it comes to consumption and also creation. I tell you what, when we're at the end of our lives, people most likely are not going to be like, remember those great Instagram reels they used to make? I mean, I hope that's not what people are saying about you when you're ready to say goodbye to this world. We are entire people outside. You are an entire person outside of your business, and most definitely outside of social media. And that is really, I think, the point I want to bring home in this episode. So those are just like 6 little ways to help you get into that and get you started. And I know that you'll think of more on your own. I know that this was also a little bit outside of my usual style episode, but it really is just something that's been on my mind and been on my heart. And it was just an invitation and opportunity to explore for yourself. And I want to leave you with a couple questions, because we're all in different places right now in our businesses. And this can help you really tangibly and practically determine these things for yourself. So just 5 questions. How much do you want to be working in or on your business right now? How much do you want to be working in or on your business right now? How much do you need to be working in or on your business right now? How much content do you really want to create? How much content do you really need to create? What does consistency and frequency look like for you in your business right now? And if you're thinking, and maybe you take those questions to business and then also to life. And if you're like, you know what, I have no time. How could I possibly add in any of those 6 ideas that you shared, Emily? Nice for you, but sorry, that's not going to work for me. I really want to just say one more thing. This isn't about squeezing anything else in. It's not trying to do it all or balance it all. It's about asking what you want and need to prioritize that feels like the right stuff for you. And sometimes that means letting other things go or putting them aside for later. And that is something for you and only you to decide, to answer, to choose. For me, I love that I can confidently use things that I've prioritized, things I've committed to and promised myself. They're sort of like my filtering system. So they help me discern between what I have time for right now and what I don't, what I say yes to and what I don't. As an example, like because X matters so much to me, I can't maybe do Y right now. Or because this is so important, this other thing needs to wait. And I think that kind of like a relationship, our businesses and our personal lives, they sort of need this right blend of immersion and also separation. So for that desire, that excitement, that creativity, that productivity to really like spark and be on fire, we need to also have a little bit of time away from it, giving ourselves space, it gives us the space to want to get back to it. And I think that's why personally, I really feel more in love with my business and how I'm doing it and what I'm doing more this year than ever. And I think that is because I am not always right up in my business's business, and it's not always right up in mine. So, okay. On that note, we're done. I told you it was going to be a little weird. So if you lasted this long, yay you, bravo to you. I will chat with you next week. And next week, we're going to get into some super simple ways to consider structure. And I'm talking structure for podcast episodes, posts, speaking, and beyond. So I will chat with you then. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.